Hey, listeners, we just wanted to let you know that this episode that we are going to be discussing regarding 1961's The Children's Hour maintains or contains topics of the subject of self-harm and suicide. And we want to let you know that if that subject matter is too much for you to handle, we completely understand if this episode isn't for you, but we also have included in the description and the show notes of this episode links to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Trevor Project, and other resources that you can use if you feel like you need to talk to somebody or if you are struggling with anything. Remember that you are not alone. This is a safe space and a community for everybody. So, with that being said, just the disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the episode.
Won't you join me?
Light up the sky.
Well, hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to that old gay classic cinema. I'm your host, Christian Garcia.
And I'm your co-host, Luke Del Mar.
And today we have a four-timer nominee returning guest, Angela Catsaros, here with us today. And
Hello.
Today we are discussing the ever-moving, ever-pivotal film, The Children's Hour, starring Audrey Hepburn, Shirley MacLaine, and James Garner.
Just when we're getting on our feet, you're ready to let it all go to hell.
Arthur, for God's sake, do you expect me to give up my marriage?
This is our lives you're playing with. That's very serious business for us. Can you understand that?
I can understand that, and I can understand a great deal more. You've been playing with a lot of children's lives. That's why I had to stop you. I know how serious this is for you, how serious it is for all of us.
I don't think you do know.
You came here to find out if I made the charge. I made it. I don't want you in this house.
Ask her again how she could see us.
I was leaning down by the keyhole.
There's no keyhole on my door.
What?
There is no keyhole on my door.
Wow, guys, what a film.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Goodness, who wants to start off this ball? Because it's really heavy.
Yeah. I'll start if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
So last year it was actually, was it I think it was the day the Odd Breakfast at Tiffany's podcast came out that we did Christian last year. And I remember I listened to it. I did like a nice long walk. I listened to it and I was like, wow, I'm in the mood for an old classic film. My boyfriend was going out for the night, so I had the apartment to myself. So I ordered some food, some ice cream, and I was like, I'm gonna have a nice little night to myself. And I was like, let's watch the Children's Hour. This is seems like a nice movie. Lots of queer themes. And obviously I knew there was the topic of, everybody turning against the two possible lesbians in the movie. So I knew it wasn't going to be like a happy film, but I had no idea what I was in store for. So I watched the movie and it's heavy, heavy, heavy up the entire time. And I'm like, well, there has to be a happy ending. It's a classic film. All of them end happily, right? Little did I know. Um, but this movie stuck with me for a while. This movie, the ending especially, and in my opinion, it's a very underrated Audrey Hepburn film and very different from anything else she's done in her entire career, I think. There's still a few movies I haven't seen of hers, but as far as all the movies I've seen, this is definitely the most heavy material she's ever done, I think.
Absolutely. We were talking about this just before we recorded, but The Children's Hour was released the exact same year that Breakfast at Tiffany's came out, and Audrey was nominated at the Oscars for Best Actress for Breakfast at Tiffany's, not this movie. And
Hmm.
like you were saying, Angela, if you look at her films leading up to this, you have things like Roman Holiday and Sabrina and Charade and Breakfast at Tiffany's, and then you have this very heavy, very somber and poignant movie that we're going to dive further into that was so topical, that was something that was brand new to talk about in film at this time. And it's very groundbreaking for being a movie from the classic era, for it to be about this subject matter and be as heavy as it is incredibly poignant to me, definitely. This was my third time watching this movie. It had popped up in my recommended, and there was also, I just remembered there was a YouTuber that mentioned this movie in a video essay about Audrey Hepburn, and I was like, oh, I've never seen The Children's Hour. I should probably watch it. And like with you, when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is not gonna. I instantly sense I'm like, this is not gonna end well. This is not gonna go well for these characters, and it was not. So, um, but Christian, this was your first time watching this movie for this recording, and what was your initial reaction?
Oh, oh boy. Um, I just remember at first I was confused because I wasn't sure what was going on. And then as I continued watching, it all made sense to me that this is a story of hiding yourself and not being able to fully grasp what unrequited love is at the time, because I think up until this point that type of trope really hadn't been, well, I think maybe for Sabrina it was discussed, but for this type of film, especially with Shirley MacLaine's character, Martha, it was just so moving. And her performance, as well as Audrey's, was just so moving. And they really deserved all the accolades that they could get. And I think that this film really does showcase a lot of what these two actresses can do without being handed a very pithy script. Like they really understood what their characters were. They understood the type of characters that they were portraying. And I think it really goes to show just how much they were willing to go for this film. I can't remember. It was Mary, right? The little girl
Hmm.
who started this whole. As I was watching it, I said, "This is like the female version of the girl who cried wolf."
Hmm.
Oh,
If you
hmm.
really think about it. And let me tell you, Mary is a little see you next Tuesday type of little girl. Because
Oh yeah.
I just, I wanted to kill her.
Great actress though, I have to say.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
Like
oh
And
if you
yes.
funny
can
enough,
make as a child, if you can make like a whole audience despise you, like you've done your job.
oh my God. And funny enough, Veronica Cartwright,
Absolutely.
who played Rosalie or Rosaline, I can't remember.
Rosalie. Hmm.
Rosalie, Twilight. Okay.
Uh-huh.
The actress who played her, Veronica Cartwright, is actually the sister of Angela Cartwright, who was in The Sound of Music.
Yes, they look exactly alike. I thought it was the same
They
girl.
do.
Oh my
But
goodness, I didn't realize that until you just said that.
yeah, she
Yeah.
plays
And
Angela
Veronica
Cartwright
Cartwright, she
plays
was famous for
Cosita.
like her roles in The Witches of Eastwick, and she was in an episode of Law and Order SVU, and she was always like that very dramatic um actress. Well, I think Angela kind of tried to shine out of the spotlight for like years. But yeah, Veronica was the one who just really went ahead with the acting
Yeah.
role. And I think this is a really great role for kids because I think not for kids, but for anyone. And if you really look at it, as I was thinking about the film in my head, this is a story about four girls. Two of them hate each other, two of them love each other.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And both of them, they both have like this sort of je ne sais quoi about them. I can't really explain it, but with Rosalie and Mary, it's like this Mary's just this very like uppity type of I want it my way, like Veruca Salt type of character. And you have
Hmm.
Rosalie, who's just this very demure, very unsure of what she wants to do. But then when her, well, never mind. We'll get into that later. Um, um, but yeah, it was just when I first watched this film a couple nights ago, like you, Angela, I was unsure of what I was about to see. And mind you, we just discussed the documentary, The Celluloid Closet, and this film was actually a part of that documentary. And I think it kind of really, as well as Luke's kind of um poking at me trying to watch his film, I finally watched it and I can say that I do agree with you, Angela, this is one of Audrey Hepburn's most underrated film.
Yeah. And it's very, I don't want to say out of character, but it's very out of the norm of the realm of the type of movies she's done. And
Hmm.
it almost makes me wonder if she like did this movie as a favor to somebody. I remember when I was in high school, I took this class called it was like some kind of writing class about like suspense and horror.
Hmm.
And we watched this movie and our teacher was like, look out for a very well-known actor who is not credited in this film. And it was Robin Williams. And this is before he
Oh,
passed away. This is like in 2012, 2013. And the reason why he
In this
did
film?
not in this, like
Oh,
in the film I
oh,
wrote. No. I'm
nobody was
talking about
born
something else.
yet.
I'm getting to something. I'm getting to something.
Oh,
He was in this. He told that he did the film as a like a favor to the director. I don't know if he got paid or not, but he told the director, "Don't credit me because I don't want people to think that this is a comedy because that's like really what a lot of the work he's done." So obviously Audrey Hepburn was credited for this film, but I wonder if she like did this movie as maybe a favor or to some, you know what I mean? Like because it's very different from all the films that she's done, or unless she just wanted to do something completely different from what she's used to, and that's why. I don't know, because it's very out of the ordinary for her.
I definitely think because I did, you know me, my favorite thing to do is obviously research who was up for roles
I can't
before they
wait.
were considered for
Yes.
them. But at least in the context of Audrey, I know that she was offered this part along with Shirley, and it was And it's so interesting. It's like we just said, because it's so against type for her. It's a subject matter that is very different from her filmography leading up to it. And would also say that in a similar way, Breakfast at Tiffany's was also somewhat of a departure in terms of like this like sexually free woman who lives her life as openly and as devil may care as she does in that film. And then this is also something that the character is very traditional, but the subject matter is what is different. And I wonder, because Audrey was such a box office draw, I wonder if United Artists was thinking, if we cast big name movie stars in this very controversial subject matter, then audiences may be inclined to go see it. And that's what I think, because Audrey, obviously being an Academy Award winner, a huge box office draw up until that point, this smaller film is like, if we get Audrey Hepburn as the lead, people will come see our movie about lesbians. Like, I just think that if I was a studio exec at the time, I think that that's the way that my brain would have gone, because it's like, how else are we going to get the general public to come see this movie of all things? So, but with all that being said, let's get into some details really quick so that we can get started with our conversation and our talking points in earnest. So, the Children's Hour, directed by William Wyler, based on the 1934 stage play of the same name by playwright Lillian Hellman. This film stars Audrey Hepburn as Karen Wright, Shirley MacLaine as Martha Doby, James Garner as Dr. Joseph Carden, the great Miriam Hopkins as Lily Mortart, Karen Blaken as Mary Tilford, and Faye Baintar in her final film as Grandma Amelia Tilford. A quick synopsis. Longtime friends Karen Wright and Martha Doby run an all-girls boarding school together with the help of Martha's Aunt Tilly. Karen is engaged to Joseph Carden, a local doctor, whose young cousin Mary Tilford attends Karen and Martha's school. After running away from the school and in an effort to avoid going back, Mary tells her grandmother that Karen and Martha are having a lesbian affair. The accusation proceeds to destroy the two women's careers, relationships, and personal lives. The film was released on December the 19th, 1961, made $3 million at the box office, received 5 Oscar nominations, including Best Supporting Actress for Faye Bainter in the role of Grandma Tilford. Didn't win anything, but I think it's time. We've already sort of dipped our toe in this, but let's start off with our first of our talking points, which is what appeals to you about this movie. I'll start. As Christian said, our previous episode, we just reviewed the 1995 documentary, The Celluloid Closet. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to our episode, please. But it's a wonderful documentary that was made about the evolution of queer representation in film. And the documentary touches on the Children's Hour because it was one of the very first films to ever openly discuss the theme of homosexuality, specifically lesbianism, in a mainstream Hollywood feature film. And because at this point in time, the Hays Code was starting to lose its grip on Hollywood, so censorship was being not as heavily enforced. Filmmakers were breaking down barriers in terms of what was being represented on film, and queer themes were one of the last things to sort of finally get their place in front of the camera. But this, of course, was all well before the gay liberation movement and Stonewall and everything. So we're in a sort of murky time period in history, both in American history and Hollywood making history. But the fact that this movie exists and the fact that this film was made when it was is just incredible. And that's one of the things that definitely makes me keep coming back to this movie. As sad and tragic as it is, I still really love watching this film because it is so poignant and so moving.
I absolutely agree. I think the thing that drew me to this film was Audrey Hepburn, which that's a very good point. I really appreciated you mentioning that the creators of this film decided to bring like big blockbuster names like Audrey Hepburn, Shirley MacLaine, and James Gardner, and put them in a film that, based on the synopsis, during that time, a lot of people probably wouldn't have seen. And I really appreciated as early as this film was made, how they like knocked down the censorship of homosexuality, and they made a blockbuster film around this subject and the harm that lies and, in this case, the truth for one of the characters, which, I'm sure we'll discuss in a second, and how it can lead to the tragedy that is the end of this movie that happened, still happens today, but even more so back then. I don't know the statistics, but at that time where homosexuality wasn't accepted at all, like it was what, I can't do math in my head, but years, decades and decades and decades before gay marriage was even legalized, let alone even like talked about openly. So I really appreciated that this film went there at such an early time and decided to bring these big names into this film to tell the story and bring people to the movies to see this film. And also another thing I just want to mention is this movie aged well. Like it still like rings true today, and how damaging, people's words and actions can really harm people. And it's very important that we stand up against that. And little brats like Mary.
100%. Kristen, did you want to say what you enjoyed most about this movie, or what specifically appeals to you about this film?
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I was just blown away by both of your responses, so I was just, taking it all in. Gosh, there's just so much that you could just take away from this film, but I think the most one thing that I just took away from it was obviously what drew me to it first was Audrey and Shirley, because I've just been in a very big Audrey and Shirley kick ever since I've seen The Apartment. And I also want to finally maybe start to watch War and Peace, but I know that film's like 10 hours long, so I'm gonna have to wait on that for a minute. Um, but just specifically Audrey and her candor and how she holds herself in this film, I think really speaks to how dedicated she is in not just this role, but in all of her roles. This film sort of, while this was done in 61, sort of cements her allegiance to the queer community. And I think she really does this as a sort of love letter and a sort of beacon of hope for some people who might not have a voice and still don't, specifically within the workforce and within people who don't feel comfortable being themselves. And when I finished the film, I texted Luke and I said she took her walk alone. And it's, for me, I thought that when I first watched this film, I thought it was going to end on Martha hanging herself, and then you just go like to the directed by Myler. I thought like as Audrey just goes down and sort of crumbles, I think that's sort of where I thought it would end. But no, we go to the funeral, and I just think now thinking back on it, I think that is a much more poignant way of ending a film. And you get to see a little bit of her grief as Audrey just channels what I think would be a very respectable way to leave a cemetery without crying your eyes out. But I think this is my theory. I'm not sure when these two films sort of collided with each other, but as we said before, this was the same year that she did Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I think maybe Blake Edwards, who directed Breakfast at Tiffany's, kind of maybe when she that scene when she sort of when she learns that her brother is dead. And I think that's sort of maybe her way of sort of maybe I think maybe Blake might have told her, like, if you weren't able to grieve over Martha and how you wanted to grieve her, I think this might be the best way to encapsulate how you would feel if your best friend or lover was taken from you. And I think that sort of, for me, I think that really just cements how Audrey cares about each and every one of her roles and the amount of dedication she's willing to put forth. And of course, Shirley, she's just an immensely amazing actress, and I think she really does a great job, an amazing job in this role with being sort of the hidden token queer character. And I think that whole scene of when she's come to terms with everything after the whole debacle with the courts and then just staying at what feels like an abandoned house. Um, Her coming to terms with how she feels about Karen and how Karen told her that she's not guilty of anything. And at that same time, Martha herself, feels guilty of not accepting herself and not being honest with herself. And she feels that guilt towards not being able to accept herself. And yeah, we'll get into a lot more over this recording, but I think this film is just a very amazing, poignant way of how much love can transcend even the grave.
Hey there, I'm Tara.
And I'm MK.
And we are your resident Good Witch hosts of Down the Yellow Brick Pod,
preserving and peeling behind the curtain on the wonderful world of Oz.
Come for the Oz fandom,
but stay for the company that's got you on your loneliest of yellow brick roads.
Through our juicy conversations, rabbit holes, and many Oz metaphors as medicine on the pod, we have tried to make sense of the wild times we live in and have traveled back to the turn of the 20th century,
to the heyday of MGM Studios,
to a super soul 1970s smash on Broadway,
the dark fantasy film era of the 80s,
90s ice skating and musical touring shows,
a 2010s reality TV search for Dorothy,
and much more, traveling through the decades as we cover all things iconic and obscure Oz.
For us, Oz has become a portal to continuously revel in history and human connection, holding space for this magical land we all have ingrained in us and the multi-layered rainbows we each are.
You can find Down the Yellow Brick Pod wherever you listen to podcasts, on Patreon for exclusive content, on Etsy for show swag, and on IG for an accompanying scrapbook to our episodes, community, and our guests.
Can't wait to hang over the rainbow. See you in Oz.
Have you ever thought, how does everyone know about this current book? And why are they running to the bookstores and libraries to get their hands on it? Or everyone's talking about this TV show, but I feel like I'm binging it months after all of my friends and family. Well, then I have the podcast for you. Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Rimby, the host and director of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, an arts and culture podcast. We discuss here LGBTQ plus society and culture, literature, TV, film, true crime, academic conversations, and pop culture. You can listen to us wherever you get podcasts, specifically Spotify and Apple. Make sure that you follow us on Spotify or Apple, rate and review us, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Ivory Tower Boiler Room. We hope you enjoy the podcast.
Beautifully said. Wow.
There's such an amazing, beautiful relationship there right from the start with Karen and Martha. You instantly are, it's like you don't even need to see their like their first meeting in college or anything. You just understand that these two are friends and they're close and there is genuine love for one another. And it's really interesting because when I watch this film for a second and third time, I started watching it with the perspective of picking up on the the queer undertones of Martha's character. Because when I first watched this movie, the film presents itself and presents the narrative that this accusation is completely made up by this child, that she's just perceiving things and that it's not real. And Martha and Karen are willing to sue for libel so that they can have their names cleared. But then the twist in the third act is that Martha is in love with Karen. She is a closeted lesbian. And that's when my heart shattered because it was like, oh my gosh, it's she was jealous of Karen being in love with Joe. She was terrified at the prospect of losing her best friend to marriage. And even though she never by any means would have acted on her desires or her impulses because she's so repressed, she feels that maybe even a slight glance or a gesture might have incited Mary or one of the other girls to assume that there was an affair going on between them, and that the lie actually wasn't a lie, but it was true the whole time. And that entire monologue or that entire sequence where Martha is breaking down is probably one of the best acted performances I've seen in a classic movie. It's so heartbreaking, it's gut-wrenching. You're hanging on every single word from the moment when she screams, "Listen to me," and then Audrey's Karen turns in her direction, and then that's when everything comes to the surface and it completely boils over. And yet, at first, Karen is saying like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Of course it was all a lie. And then when she realizes that Martha actually is telling the truth about herself, she's still there for her friend. She's still there and still supportive. And she even tells her like, let's leave this place and let's start over together. We can find a place where we can move on and start over. And even if Karen doesn't love Martha in the way that Martha loves Karen, there is still that sisterly women friendship, women supporting women friendship that is there, that is the foundation of their relationship. And so then rewatching this a second and third time, I picked up on all of the little crumbs and context clues that Martha gave of her attraction to Karen, even though she would never ever say it out loud. And I would also say that this is one of Shirley's best performances I've ever seen. The Apartment is excellent. She was robbed of the Academy Award, in my opinion. But this is one of her best movies that I've ever seen. And she holds her own next to Audrey. And getting into the getting into our queer analysis discussion, this is definitely one of the first movies, at least that I've reviewed with you, Christian, where there's it's not about undertones and theoretical interpretation. This is right here, smack you in the face queerness. And one of the things that is so important to contextualize about this movie is this film was released during the Lavender Scare that was happening in America around the same time of the Red Scare with the anti-communism witch hunt was the Lavender Scare. And that started well into the late 1940s in an effort to ban LGBTQ people from holding government jobs, and then it was fused in with the anti-communist campaign, and it was a moral panic that was effectively happening where people were turning on each other. And if the accusation of being queer was just as damning to a person if they actually were queer, because that could destroy someone's life. It's and what you said, Angela, about this movie being so timely and still so relevant is one of the things that this movie does so effectively and that still happens today, unfortunately, is the whole think of the children type of statement about how, like, as soon as everybody got, like, even the inkling that there were lesbians teaching their children in a private school, every single, like, that spread like wildfire and everyone pulled their kids out of school. And how many times have we seen where where conservative adults are trying to ban queer people from being in the same space as children? It's like people don't want to see drag queens reading to kids
Yep.
at story time. People don't want LGBTQ identifying people as teachers in places with schools. It's like, and this is one of those films that obviously touches so deeply on that. And what original playwright Lillian Hellman said, this film or this play and then the movie that it was adapted into is about the power of lies and gossip. And then of course you have the added layer of importance and heft of the queer element to it as well. Because it's not just any lie, it's not just any bit of gossip. It is a bit of gossip that could destroy the livelihood of a person. And
Absolutely.
it's devastating. The ramifications that happen in this film, you can just, even in the silent performances, once the school is empty and it's just Karen and Martha, the devastation and heartbreak of everything they've built up is completely lost. And there is no coming back from this. Even when Mrs. Tilford returns and she says that she found out that Mary fabricated the whole thing and that she'd be willing to go. She'd already talked to the judge and she's like, I'll get him to repeal it. There'll be a public apology and everything. And it's like that's not enough.
The damage
It
is already done.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's irreversible what's happened.
Mhm.
And that's that's what's so damning and heartbreaking about it. And going back to Martha's um uh monologue, her confession moment. The I think what makes that specific scene so tragic is that even though I've looked at a lot into a lot of people's like discussions about this movie, there are a lot of people that say that the children's hour is problematic for the way that Martha is so self-loathing. But sadly, even in 2025, there
That's
are
what
queer
it
people,
is. Yeah.
there are queer people that still have that internalized monologue with themselves.
Yep.
So terrified and so petrified of their own sexuality that they think of themselves as some form of perversion
Yeah.
or they're disgusting. And I'm putting those words in quotations because queerness is nothing to be feared. But when you're living in a time period where all of the language around it is about fear,
Mhm.
and there was no safe spaces for queer people unless it was underground, unless it was illegal, because it was all being repressed.
Right.
And that still unfortunately rings true for a lot of queer people, even in the 21st century when we are living in a
Absolutely.
world where we have gay marriage and we have laws that are put in place to protect queer people, but then of course we're
Red
also
states.
unfortunately living in a current political and social climate that would rather take us back to a place like the 1960s.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so important that we have movies like this and we keep talking about them because we've already been here. we should not be going backwards in terms of progress made for the safety of queer people. And that queer people, it's, I mean, I wish I would want to grab everybody's hand who's in the closet right now and say that you are beautiful and there is nothing wrong with you, and you take your time, because everyone's coming out journey is goes at their own pace. There's no rule book or guidebook on how you have to do it or when you have to do it, but whatever you do, don't end it all because you are afraid to come out, because there will come a day, there will come a time when you will be safe to do so. And I just hope that sorry, I hope that resonates with people, because there's nothing there's nothing more devastating than knowing that those statistics are out there that often go unchecked and unremarked. And it's really, really devastating for that to still be a reality. So sorry about that.
Yeah. No. Oh my gosh, don't be sorry. It's true. It's I didn't real I mean, I guess it makes sense what you said, that the movie is considered problematic because Martha is so self-loathing, but like unfortunately that's how it is for a lot of people still today, especially, people who grow up in those small towns, religious beliefs, red states, counties, they don't see people like them, at least openly, unless they go to like a big city like New York or LA or Chicago or any of those places. I think this movie is very important, and I think it definitely stands the test of time. And I think everybody should see it, even though it's very sad. Um, yeah.
There's, again, going back to what we were talking about with the celluloid closet in the last episode, about how this was unfortunately the representation that was made in this day and age, because that was the conversation in society around queerness. But I wouldn't I wouldn't go back in time and stop this movie from being made. I wouldn't try to erase it from the filmography of queer cinema. I think that we need to have movies like The Children's Hour so that we can learn from what it was like to live in that time period in the past. And then we keep moving forward and we keep making progress. It's astounding that this film was made when it was, because what's fascinating is that this movie, which I said is based on a Broadway play from 1934, when the play was written, it was illegal for homosexuality to be even discussed on a Broadway stage. You couldn't mention it. But because the play was a critical and commercial success, the censors in New York overlooked it and they were willing to let it go. And because it was so successful. And what I found was so wonderful is that this movie was a serious contender for the Pulitzer Prize for drama for that year in 1934. There were people that wanted to give it the award, but there was one homophobic committee member that refused to see the play. So they decided to give it to Zoe Akin's The Old Maid, which is a different play. And there were a lot of people that were going to the Pulitzer Committee and protesting their decision, because they were saying like like you're acting like censors by rejecting the play because of its subject matter. And in a way to sort of save face, the Pulitzer Committee said, "Oh, well, the reason that we did this is because the Children's Hour is based on a court case. It's not therefore an original story." And then people were like, "But The Old Maid is based on a novel, so your reasoning doesn't even make sense." And so because of that, the New York Drama Critics Circle decided that they were going to be going to be honoring films in their own way because the Pulitzer Committee didn't award the Children's Hour. And yes, this entire story is based on a real life incident that happened.
I didn't realize that.
There was an all-girls school in England, um, or in Scotland, excuse me. It was in Edinburgh, Scotland, back in 1810, and a little girl accused her two headmistresses of being in a lesbian affair and told her grandmother, and it spread like wildfire. And these two Scottish school teachers took them to court and actually won their libel case, unlike what happens in the Children's Hour. But because of the publicity and the scandal, their entire careers were still destroyed. The victory was hollow because of what had happened. And it's I'm
It,
thankful. Go ahead, Angela.
sorry, is I'm assuming in the original like the 1810 like real life story, one of them wasn't actually a lesbian or that
No,
we know of. So is that
no.
was that fictionalized for the play or the movie?
So what Lillian Hellman did was she took that premise and she adapted it for 1930s when her play was written, but what she added was Martha actually being a closeted lesbian instead
Got
of
it.
in real life with the two women were heterosexual. There was
Got
no
it.
there was it was a girl that was trying to get out of school by spreading a horrible rumor, but the play and the movie added that element, and therefore I think is what makes it so much more poignant. Because if it had been just a straight dramatization of what happened, I feel like you wouldn't have had as moving as an ending. I think
Yeah,
that
it wouldn't
actually
make that much of an impact.
it wouldn't. I feel like having Martha actually be closeted and then have her confession to Karen is what makes the story so moving and tragic in a way that is still poetically tragic. There is a beauty in the way that this film is directed and the way that Audrey and Shirley act those scenes, and especially like I said, the scene afterwards where despite everything that's been said, Karen still wants Martha to come away with her to start over together because she still loves her as a best friend. And um Christian, like you said, it's a story about unrequited love. And I mean, I can't count the number of times that I fell for a straight guy, but they were still my friend afterwards, even if I told them that I liked them. But going off topic, but I think what's most important to remember, and I think what answers the question of how does this film hold up is I like Angela, like you said, I can understand why people think that this film is not good representation because of all of the self-loathing that she has for herself, but that unfortunately still happens with people today. And that is why the story is so important. But also, it's that being queer should not end a person's livelihood or their standing in society. And it's nothing to be damned, to be mocked, or to be ridiculed in that way anymore. So that is why this film is a cautionary tale in so many different ways. It's a cautionary tale for people who feel like as a person from the outside, as a person with privilege or with power, that they think that they can tear people down because of their differences or what makes them different from them or different from society. Just the power of your words in terms of the damage that it can cause is what I would say is what definitely makes this movie hold up for me.
Absolutely.
No, sorry, I was just again taken away by your guys' discussion. It was just, very moving. And I just want to say thank you for both of you for taking the time to come on and discuss this amazing film, which, like we said in the beginning of the episode, was very undeserved and uncredited for a lot of people's history with film, and especially um with these actors' roles and actors in general. It's just some of this film is sort of like put to the sidelines in some aspects, and I think that really is horrible in some aspects because this film really does paint a a beautiful yet sad picture of how gossip can ruin someone's life and how unfortunate it can be if someone just believes one false rumor where it can really damage and be irrevocable in one's life. And I just think this film portrays a really great, and again, this film did come out in 61, and it does a really great aspect of how much queer discussion is needed, and especially if someone is dealing with the self-loathing feeling that Martha feels within herself. It needs to be expressed and discussed in a very open forum, and it needs to be discussed in a place where one would feel accepted and loved, you know. And I just think this film really does paint a beautiful picture of how friendships really don't need a sort of definition of how they love each other. They just love each other because of how much time they spend together or how much they have in common. There really doesn't have to be a definition. And it's just very telling of how much these two characters can live rent free within their lives. And I just think that this film really is poignant. And yeah, sorry, I'm rambling.
No, not never rambling on this podcast.
Oh no.
I
We all have a lot of feelings about these
Yeah.
films.
we do. And I just wanted to add one more thing, something that actually just sort of like all the pieces like fell into place in my mind with what I was thinking about is not not to say at all that um this movie was made with the intention of quote unquote educating straight people, but I feel like this movie is with especially with the way that it ends is to show, I think, at least 1960s audiences the what it's like to go through the world that they were living in queer. Obviously, Martha's journey does not represent all queer people, but Martha and other queer people unfortunately share a lot of those feelings about themselves with the self-loathing and the way that I would wonder if I could go back in time. I wonder if there were any people that went to go see, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to go see the new Audrey Hepburn movie. Or did you hear about this movie that came out? It's about lesbians. And someone went to go see it and bought a ticket. And someone in 1961 sat in that theater, watched that movie, and felt the severity and the importance of what it means to unconditionally love and support your queer person that happens to be in your life. Because that's what Karen does. She does not sneer at Martha. She does not reject her. She does not disown her as a person. She loves her as an ally, as a best friend, as a sister. And I would be curious to know if because this conversation was finally starting to happen in 1961, surrounding by all the noise of what was happening again with the lavender and the red scare, if someone sat and watched this film and when it ended they thought, I think I have a family member or a friend who's like Martha, and I don't want them to end up like Martha. And I hope that when people see this movie now, they understand this is where we came from. This was not 100 years ago. This was not centuries ago. This is something that unfortunately still happens today. But when you see it displayed in a film that way, when you see it displayed so tragically, because especially the way that as soon as Karen started running up the footpath, as soon as she started accelerating up the footpath and realizing that she put the pieces together in her head before the audience did, in terms of, oh my God, Martha's in her bedroom alone.
Yeah.
The and as soon as she was knocking on that door, I was like, it's over. I know it.
Yeah.
I know that what's on the other side of that door. And forewarning, the stage play depicts Martha's suicide with a gunshot happening off stage. Yes. When Grandma Tilford comes back into the girls' school to tell Karen that Mary lied, they both are sitting in the front room of the school when they hear it happen off stage. But the way that they rewrote it, the way that Weiler directed it, I think it would have been too gruesome. I think it would have been in poor taste if it had been a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I think that having it be that way and the way that the close up on her eyes after she finally breaks down the door and her eyes go from the ground up, it's just,
Mhm.
and
Uh,
all you see is shadow. You don't even see Martha. All you see is it in
yep.
shadow. And you don't need to see Martha for that impact to hit as hard as it does. The last image we see of Martha is her sitting in the chair, pulling back the curtains, looking at Karen as she's going out for a walk in fresh air. And you see there's a little bit of a smile on her face because I think that she knows that she feels the love and acceptance of Karen, but Martha sadly feels that the only way for Karen to move on is without her. And like I said, I want to reach out to every queer person and say that your loved ones and your family would rather have you here than not. And that is that it's again, this movie is moving, it is poignant, it is so sad, but it is still beautiful in a way that I like I said, this is my third time watching this movie. It's heavy, but it's still a great film to watch. And
Mhm.
I'm I'm really happy that we were able to have this conversation about this film. So let's lighten the mood a little bit and get into some fun facts.
Yay! I was like literally on the verge of tears as you were like talking about that last scene and all that. Oh, hi, Theo. Theo wants to join the podcast.
We have an extra special guest for any of our listeners on who don't have the visual. Angela just brought up her adorable little pooch. So cute. Her little puppy. Hello. Oh my gosh. I'm obsessed with dogs so much.
Hello, guys.
Hi.
Okay, go back to daddy.
Okay.
Fun
Okay.
facts.
Okay. Does anybody have any fun facts or any behind the scenes that they found out that they would like to share?
I don't, sadly.
Yeah.
I was just moved by this whole film that I had to take a breather for a minute.
That's okay. That's okay.
My fun fact, Christian already mentioned it, but it's the fact that Veronica Cartwright, the actress who plays Rosalie, is Angela Cartwright's sister, who played Brigitte in The Sound of Music. And they
Hmm.
look identical. I thought it was the same girl, but I was like, but that doesn't add up because she was like 10 when she did Sound of Music, but she's 10 here. How it doesn't make sense. But that was but then I realized I was like, oh, they're sisters. That's so cool. And I probably should fact check this because this was something I noticed when I watched the movie last year. This was the only or one of the only films that the actress who played Mary did, which I thought was very interesting because she was so good in this movie. And I feel like she totally could have gone on to like have an amazing career, but this is the only movie that she's done.
Yeah, I cannot she does not have a Wikipedia page, and she's she's 76 years old. She's still with us.
Yeah.
But she did a couple more smaller things, but nothing. I think this was her first film credit, and I mean, what an amazing debut performance
Absolutely.
by Karen Blaken, because like I can't remember which one of you said it, but to play a child that hateful and have the entire audience be rooting against you, like you know that you've done a good job.
Yeah.
But let me tell you who was offered the role of Mary before Karen Blaken got it.
Tell me, tell me.
None other than Haley Mills. Pollyanna herself was offered the role of Mary.
Can you
How-
imagine?
However, because she had a contract with
With
Disney, she was
Disney.
not able to do the children's hour. So she read the script, she was offered the part, but because of her contract with Disney, she could not do the movie.
When
And
did
it
she do
went,
Pollyanna? Was that 60? Or was that six?
1960.
I,
Yeah.
so that was 1 year
that was the
before.
year before this one.
Wow.
Gosh
It's so
darn
crazy
it.
how they back then they had contracts with uh networks like
With studios.
MGM the
Hmm.
studios, thank you, like MGM and Disney, like, and you couldn't do anything else. That's so
You
wild to
remember the
me.
story with Snow White, Andrea Casalati? It's
Yeah, of
basically the same
course.
deal that
So
Haley Mills basically
crazy.
had to do with this one.
Mhm. Wow, I did not
What
know
and,
that.
and what movie was also released in 1961 in addition to the Children's Hour and Breakfast at Tiffany's, but the original Parent Trap with Haley Mills. So that movie came out
Oh,
the same year as
And
this.
101 Dalmatians. Sorry, that was
Oh my
another.
god,
and 101 Dalmatians. Don't forget about
101
that one.
Dalmatians.
That was
Oh
a good one.
yes.
So I also found, now, unfortunately, I couldn't find exactly who was offered which part, but I do know that both Katharine Hepburn and Doris Day were optioned for one of the two female leads.
Wow.
But it
Oh.
was ultimately decided that Katharine, unfortunately, was too old and Hollywood with their ageism to play a school teacher like that. And
So they went
Doris
with the other Hepburn.
they went with the other Hepburn, no relation.
So
But
funny.
Doris Day passed on the project because she was too busy making romantic comedies with Rock Hudson.
Um,
So,
okay, fine then.
but this is the thing that absolutely like this is blows my mind so much is that this is not the first film adaptation of The Children's Hour. So this play, which I'm holding up my copy of the books of the plays of Lillian Hellman, as I said, was originally produced in 1934. In 1936, MGM optioned it to be made into a movie, and William Wyler was going to direct it. But because of the Hays Code, they could not allow any lesbianism elements to be featured in the film. So the rumor is changed so that Martha is having an affair with Joe while he's engaged to Karen. So the play was straight washed, if you will, for this adaptation. But here's the thing that's crazy. William Wyler directed both that movie, which they retitled it to These Three, which is what that adaptation was called, as well as directing The Children's Hour almost over 20 years later. And Miriam Hopkins played Martha in the 36 version, and she plays Aunt Tilly in the Children's Hour. So she's in both film adaptations of this play.
No way. Wait, who did she play in the original film? Martha?
She played Martha in These
Wow.
Three, and then she comes back to play Aunt Tilly in this version. And what's hilarious is Aunt Tilly is supposed to be a former stage actress, and there's a scene where she comes into one of the girls' rooms and she's holding a portrait of Miriam Hopkins, like much younger from like her like older like Warner Brothers days, which I think is amazing, like a glamorous painting that was done of her, I think from some movie or something. But I just caught that she was holding like a portrait of her younger self as she's like packing up all of her clothes and
That's
everything.
hilarious. Oh wow. So was the original film that she was in, was it also called The Children's Hour?
No, it was retitled to These
Oh,
Three
these three.
from 1936.
Oh.
Same director,
Okay.
same Miriam Hopkins connection. Lillian Hellman actually, as the playwright, she was fine with this with the redo with the first version because she obviously understood that her play couldn't be adapted verbatim because of the censors. But when it was optioned the second time around to be adapted in earnest, the way that the play is originally written, she was really, really happy. She was like, okay, finally, like my play with its original themes are coming back for a second time around. And
Was she involved in the making of the film?
she was involved with both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Lillian was, and she didn't write the screenplay for both. Actually, what's interesting
Was
is
she optioned to write it for her second time around?
she was brought on as a creative consultant for the adaptation, but the
Okay, so like a
screenwriter
J.K. Rowling.
But the but the screenwriter was actually John Michael Hayes, who was a frequent collaborator with Hitchcock, who wrote Rear Window. So he was a very, very talented screenwriter. And
I have a question. I'm so
yes,
sorry.
well,
Just because I'm like mind blown by this. The movie These Three, so it's Martha, Karen, and Joseph. Those are
yes.
these three. Was Martha actually having an affair with the fiance, or was it just like a rumor?
So Mary spreads the rumor that Martha is sleeping with Joe while he's engaged to Karen. They go to court for libel and lose the case. Martha confesses that she has been in love with Joe all this time, but she never acted on her feelings.
Got it.
And Karen and Joe go off and get married after Martha and Karen reconcile. So it has the skeleton of the plot, but
Yeah.
all the lesbianism is gone.
Yeah. Wow. They really straight washed it because it didn't make sense to me. I was like, wait a minute, what? But now that makes sense. Wow.
Yeah,
Have
it
you
was
seen that one? Have either
I
of
have
you
not
seen that?
I have not seen these three.
I haven't even heard of it.
I've seen clips of it, but I have not. It's not regarded as one of Miriam Hopkins' best movies or one of William Wyler's either because it just got so muddled. And that was one of the criticisms
Right.
of the film is that people that had seen the stage play saw this and they were like, it's not even the
It's
same
yeah.
material. Like
It's
it's
a
not even the
completely
same adaptation. Like
it's
you
a
can't
completely
call the
different movie.
exactly that I mean it couldn't even have the same title, but it
Right.
still had the same characters and somewhat of the same plot.
That's so bizarre. I mean, it sounds interesting, like the love triangle, the best friend, like it's scandalous. But I would almost take the little girl out of it completely and just make it like I don't just I would have never thought that that was taken from the children's hour if I had like if I didn't know any better and I
Yeah.
watched the movie, I would have had no idea.
hmm Um, Speaking of dogs, um, it was I found out that Audrey Hepburn at the very beginning was really, really enthusiastic about making this movie, but the emotional tone and also apparently the long days of shooting was sort of taking a toll on her. So it was very important that her son Sean and her Yorkie Terrier that she named Mr. Famous was on set with her every day to improve on her mood.
Oh,
So to keep her spirits up, she had her baby and her dog on set with her.
I love that. Oh,
Which if you were making a movie, Angela, I'm sure you would want to have your dog on set with you for
absolutely.
emotional support.
Absolutely. I bring Theo to work with me like at least once a week. Like just he just chills in my office.
I love that. I
Oh
love
yeah,
that.
and everybody in the office loves him. He's not allowed to be there. Hopefully the GM and HR never see him, but My direct bosses don't care as long, and it's so funny because one time I put him in my friend's office and she closed her door and he was like barking for me and the GM was in the office right next to her. So she's like coughing to like and then she had to bring him back to me. She's like, "You need your dog back."
That's like a scene out of a sitcom or something.
Oh my gosh, literally, it's hilarious. And I'll if I remember, I'll send you the video of him jumping to trying to get to open the door with the doorknob because he's tiny, he can't reach it. He's literally like jumping. Oh, it's so funny. I'll send it to you guys in a little bit. Hilarious.
My gosh. I've I've also got another fun fact about Miss Veronica Cartwright, as we were talking about her earlier, who played Rosalie. She said in an interview that her and the other children on set were told not to hang out with Shirley MacLaine because apparently she cursed a lot. But they still did regardless, and they thought that she was like really nice and really generous and sweet. And like and Shirley became like Veronica Cartwright's mentor throughout like the making of the movie and everything. So they developed like a really good professional relationship together. And that makes me really, really happy to hear that. But it's also so funny because I love I'm sure you've seen this, but I love watching classic movie bloopers that exist because it's like hearing people like Betty Davis and James Stewart and Rosalind Russell just curse after they miss a take or something. It's like people were as foul-mouthed as we are today, but it's like so.
It's so funny, and it's funny because they're like obviously they didn't have social media back then, so we don't see any of these people, on Instagram and TikTok and whatnot. And they're so prim and proper on the red carpet in these films. So like seeing them like get out of that for a second because they mess up their line or they forgot their blocking, it's hilarious. I love it.
And yeah, I think I went through. Oh, there was one more behind the scenes fact, not so much a fun fact, but a behind the scenes fact of apparently um Audrey and Shirley said later on that even though they were proud of the movie that they made it, they weren't necessarily 100% happy because a lot of their scenes together were cut because William Wyler was afraid that he had added sequences where like the two women were being more intimate and more physical together, like the other one, like one brushing the other one's hair or like touching each other a little bit more lovingly, and he cut them because he was afraid that the movie wouldn't get a seal of approval from the studio, so he tried to whittle it down. And the ladies were like, "Oh, some of our scenes are gone. Like they're like even if it was like sweet tender moments between the two of them didn't make the cut." But I wouldn't have known if that fact hadn't been made known to me. I would not have known that that was a thing because their friendship is still very much the centerpiece of this entire film, and it's still done so wonderfully. But if someone in a vault finds those cut scenes from the children's hour, please release them for like if the Criterion Collection could find them, like release them or something because I want to know what they look like because
they have to be somewhere.
They gotta be somewhere. They gotta
be somewhere in the vault.
Well, I think we've talked for over an hour about this movie. We've waxed poetic, we've gotten emotional, we've talked about just how beautiful and wonderfully poignant this movie is, and I'm so happy that I finally got Christian to watch this movie, and I'm so happy to you, Angela, for coming on board to discuss it with us. This was a great one. This was a really, really great discussion. And
Absolutely.
I'm really
when
happy.
I watched it last year, I told Christian, add it to your list. We got to do this one.
And I said, we're going to do it. And now look at us now, a couple months later. And we did it.
We did it. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. I always love being here with you
Angela,
guys.
thank you for being on with us. We love having you. We cannot wait to have you back on whatever other film you want to do. Please let us know, and we'll add you to our little roster list
Mm-hmm.
because you're now number 4 on our repeat offenders list. So,
I love it.
guys, again, thank you guys for listening to us. And again, we will be putting in the show notes lists of call center numbers and the Trevor Project as well, because they also have a hotline number. Unfortunately, they are depleting day by day by day with this crazy world. And I just want to point out that there are resources that you can find that adhere to if you are feeling lost, if you are feeling hopeless, if you are feeling unseen by anybody. We will be putting down in the show notes lists of contacts and organizations that you can go to that are truly helpful and can help you in immense ways by just picking up the phone and just talking to someone.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to add that in.
We here at Olga Classic Cinema want to make sure that this is a safe space for everyone. We love all of our listeners. We are so grateful for all of you. And if you happen to be struggling, please know that you are not alone and that there is always someone to talk to, someone out there. And like Christian said, we will put links, phone numbers, resources in the description under both the audio recording of this upload as well as the YouTube upload as well will be in the description box down below. But thank you all so much. Please be sure to subscribe to our official YouTube channel. Give us a like, give us a comment. Please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much again to Angela, to Christian, to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room for the co-collaboration. And we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
guys.
Only